So welcome back, everybody. We are continuing in chapter 40, Perek Mem. It is in the original text on page Nun Zayin, or 112, which is right opposite of Nun Zayin, and we're holding L'shabed halev hameach, or rather maybe a line under L'hamshech al malchusi yisbarich Hashehi malchus kol olamim v'chulu. So if you recall, again, the base of this Perek is the idea of Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shamayim, Yira, the simple Yira, the simple fear, which means accepting upon oneself the yoke of Hashem, the simple fear, the simple Yira, not chas v'shalom to rebel. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu may be mitzvah saseh, mitzvah leiseseh, a positive mitzvah, or a mitzvah leiseseh, this that Hashem tells us not to do. In other words, again, coming from the previous chapters, Alter Rebbe introduced a different levels of Ava B'Yira, or expanded on the different levels of Ava B'Yira, love and fear to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, while one is more of a base for mitzvah saseh, I love you Hashem, I want to embrace you, and you are your mitzvahs, as it says in Zohar, mitzvahs is a varim de malka, the limbs of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that is what is, and therefore I want to embrace you, I fear you, and as such I will never want to do this which you tell me not to do, which is the Yira, which is a base for Mrs. Leises. Again, different expressions of different heart expressions, one associated with the drive to Hashem, one the awe of Hashem, and again, even there, if you recall, the different levels of Ava B'Yira, different levels of love and fear, the Ava B'Yira Tivis, the inherent, the natural love of Ava B'Yira, the more expressional, the more passionate Ava B'Yira, love and fear. But this Perek says, stop, before you get into that relationship mode with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Remember, Hashem is a melech in the end of the day, He's a king, we are His subject, and therefore we have to make sure that there is an underlying Yira, there's an underlying fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, simply that I will not veer even one bit from this which I'm mandated, my mandate demands from me, which means there's a mandate with Hashem, the mandate when Hashem placed upon me, to do what as a yid, in to follow strictly and scrupulously Shulchan Aruch. I will make sure to do so because He's a melech and we do not rebel in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So before, again, that relationship, that more sentimental, or that relationship which is based on these different levels of heart expression, sentimental levels with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we have to first and primarily know that Hashem is a melech, Hashem is a king, and we have to be very careful. In other words, this tells us also that even this which Hashem tells us to do, it's not so much because, again, as the Yisaid, as the base, as Alter Rebbe begins the chapter, the Ikra, the first and the main part of the Aveda, the root of the Aveda, has to be the Yira, the fear, Leil Shalei Limrei, the Melech Malchem Lachem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not to rebel, and the King of all kings, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which tells us even this, what Hashem tells us to do, it's not because I love you, Hashem, I want to embrace you, and you are your mitzvahs, the mitzvahs are your limbs, the 248 limbs of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or His mitzvahs, and therefore I want to embrace you, which that's again expression of Ava. Before anything, we have to know that Hashem tells me to do that, I'm going to do it. Before the love, before that sentiment of drive, that drive to embrace Him, be careful. He's a king, He told you to do something, do it. There's a Yira dimension over here, there's a fear dimension over here. I will never rebel in the in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the King of all kings, Melech Malcham Lachem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he told me to put up a mezuzah. I'll make sure to put up a nice mezuzah. I'll make sure that it's 100% kosher. I'll make sure that it's the way Hashem wants the mezuzah to look like, and with all the hidurim, and more so because he's a melech. I want to do it perfectly right. When the king comes by, the soldiers make sure that all their buttons are perfectly polished. Hashem is here, and therefore I will make sure that this, what he asks me, I won't fail even a bit, even in the smallest of scale, in fulfilling Hashem's desire. So there's a yira. Hashem is a king. He's coming. He's here. He's here, rather. Again, as the Alter Rebbe goes on, Hashem nitzav alav. The mezuzah will be just perfect. I'll make sure it's on the right and the appropriate place, and so on and so forth, because he's a melech. So before, again, the yira and ava, the way it's divided, one as a basis for leisesa, the negative mitzvahs, again, more that sentimental base, which is more of a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even though there's the yira, the fear, the awe. But before that, there has to be, well, he is a melech, he is a king. And as a subject, I have to be careful. Now, that point, you're talking about being careful, it's really irrelevant. The mitzvah same mitzvah. Again, as we elaborated on in the previous chapters, and we say Hashem, and then the Alter Rebbe goes, Hashem nitzav alav Hashem. It's not, again, as well, we expanded on this. Allah, Hashem is standing over me, like the story with Yaakov Avinu. Again, these words are taken from the pasuk, are from that pasuk. Hashem nitzav alav, as an individual. He looks at you, and examines the inside of the person, the heart of the person. If he's serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu in an appropriate way, and appropriately, we pointed this out as well. It's not only we serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we do it koroi. That we utilize, or we do the job with complete devotion, whatever is incumbent upon the yid to do. Koroi, a pair of tefillin has to be in the right place, and put it on, and be careful, and the tefillin should be koroi, which means checked and kosher, and even mahuder, and so on. And every single mitzvah is done koroi, and more so our overall mandate, how we are in Limud Torah, and how we are in giving tzedakah. It's not only I do what I'm supposed to do, but if I can do more, Hashem wants us to do more. If I have 30 minutes or an hour to learn Torah, I learn 50 minutes or even 59.9 minutes. It's not yet karoi. It's close, but it's not yet karoi. Hashem, the Lashon Alter Rebbe adds, again, is also based on the Gemara, which we explained, which we mentioned. There was a big Baal Tzedakah. He gave so much tzedakah, but the Torah says, the Gemara says, the wheel turned on him to a very great degree, is because he wasn't kidduboy lemev. It wasn't the way he could have given tzedakah. And so too in his all mitzvahs. Again, we pointed this out, of that word karoi, and therefore, again, we went on. It was just a bit of a while, so we're just trying to recap a little bit. And therefore, we went on and said, therefore, the Alter Rebbe goes on, one has to stand and serve in service in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu with fear and awe, like he's standing in front of a king, and ponder on this thought at any time, for that matter. But the Alter Rebbe says, namely before davening and before the person begins his day, with Sheiti Rasei, the Yira of HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be upon him. It's not this lashon over here, but namely it should be Kol Hayom, the entire day, which this is the reason why it is incorporated into the Yid's and the schedules of a Yid. He doesn't begin his day with connecting himself to world affairs, maybe by his business and so on and so forth, and then davens and learns Torah. No, the beginning of the day, this is the way it's established, that he davens and learns to energize himself, to remain focused on this which a Yid has to remain focused on, and the reason why he came down to this world, on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, his mandate, etc. And that gives this is why we do it every single day, not once a year, once a month, once a week, every day, because every day we have to be able to find. We have to be able to reestablish, invigorate our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in order again to stay focused and to put things in perspective. Why we're here in this world to make HaKadosh Baruch Hu a dwelling place in Elam Hazeh Gashmi, in this very physical world. Again, this is the reason why we daven and learn. So this is the time before a person puts on tefillin, he says, to know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, again, as we elaborated on in this previous class, that before any learning Torah mitzvahs, he gives an example before putting on talis. And again, this is the reason why probably the talis and tefillin, the Alter Rebbe takes it a little further, because this is the very beginning of the day, and what the elukus, the godliness, is found in the asius of tefillah and Torah, and the letters and words of prayer and Torah. The elukus which is found in the tefillin, and again how this is supposed to extract within the person that connection via leiv and meich, like it says in Shulchan Aruch, l'shabet ha'meich, to submit my heart and mind to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does it mean in practical terms, and how does it fit with this which is said about tefillin, how it represents the chokhmah bina of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the das of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is divided into chesed and gvura, and again how this is aligned, how this makes this halacha l'shabet ha'lev ha'meich, this subordinance of heart and mind, real, tangible, and so on. Again, this is where basically we left off, or in this area we left off, and then the final part where we left off is the atifas hatalis. The fact that there's something unique about the mitzvah of talis, that a person surrounds himself with a talis, completely wraps himself with the talis, which is the notion of kabbalas hamalchus, accepting the yoke of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the kingdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why is it symbolic in the mitzvah of tzitzis, the mitzvah rather of talis? Because it surrounds a person. One's submission to a king does not reflect in one particular detail, and the rest he's just a free man. If one is a subject to a king, a soldier, for example, everything about it, his sleeping, his eating, his naturally his fighting in the army and so on, for the king and his position, for the king and his authority. But it's not only in the time that he's in battle or preparing for battle. It's everything about the soldier is about his complete submission to this higher authority, ultimately the king. So too, this is the purpose why the talis is a mitzvah. It doesn't only go on the hand or on the head, similar to the tefillin, which naturally carries its own message, but it completely wraps the person around. As the lashon over here, this is the part of the kavanah, like it says in Zer lahamshech ala malchus yisbarach, to draw HaKadosh Baruch Hu malchus upon him. And this is again where we left off. And again, you could see it in just go to Tanya, the link box Tanya, or you could scroll down the bar. There's many times, or most of the time, the previous Tanya classes are there in this Kosher Tube site, or as well on the TanyaOnline.com, which is the same class hosted by the same host. It's just with a bit more of structure, again because it's in the context of the fact that it's only Tanya, and again in the context of the Tanya share, naturally, that you could follow with the text. You have easy access to all the previous classes, and including the more recent classes, and all the recent classes as well. You can follow along with the scroll bar, which is easy following along with the text. Just following going along with that scroll bar on the screen, so you can see all the previous classes. But we're going to begin again today from here. We took a little more time today because I believe there was a little bit more of a gap between the previous class. So Laham Shechal of Malchus Yisbarach, the point of mitzvahs, the mitzvahs tzitzis. Baruch atah Adonai Elohim Malchim Shekel Mi'abidvari. So we're holding on Asher Hi Malchus Kol Ilamim, which we're dealing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Malchus, which we place upon ourselves, that Hashem's Malchus is not limited to one domain. It is Malchus Kol Ilamim. is the Malchus of all worlds, which means Hashem is the only king, which exists in every area of in the entire Seder Ishtalshalus, which means Kol Ulamim, in all worlds. He is the only Melech. And the point is Liyachta Aleinu, to connect with us, those who do the mitzvahs, which is ultimately Aleinu, Klal Yisrael, the Yid, Al Yidei Mitzvah, through this mitzvah. As it's pointed out in a number of places, putting on the talis is similar to Seim Tosim Alecha Melech. There's a mitzvah, there's a pasuk in the Torah which says, Seim Tosim Alecha Melech, place upon you a king. This is the mitzvah, as it becomes one of the 613 mitzvahs, to the Am Yisrael as a whole places upon themselves, establishes the king which would lead Klal Yisrael, which would lead Am Yisrael, which, starting from Shaul, for example, Shaul was the first, even though Moshe Rabbeinu, it says, Vahi Bishur Melech, referring to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Shaul, David Melech, all the kings and monarchs in Am Yisrael, all that, and they led Am Yisrael, those who were Melachim Kshedim, those who eventually did tshuva. The point why Am Yisrael was as well established in a way, or is established in a way, that there is a leader, but not only a leader, someone who just a guy, but is a king. Why is Am Yisrael led in this fashion? Why is it established that by Am Yisrael as well there's a king? For one and only reason, not because Kechol HaGoyim Beis Yisrael, that we identify ourselves or we equate ourselves to other nations, which they as well, especially in the past, namely in the past, was the king-subject relationship between the king, the leader of the country, or the leader of the group. That it wasn't only just the leader, but it was as well in the image of a melech, a king. Not only because of that does Am Yisrael imitate all the other nations, quite on the contrary, that Yisrael is Boded Yeshiv, we sit separately, meaning to say that Hashem does not want us to imitate other nations, but it's because it's a mitzvah asay in the Torah, same Tosim Alecha Melech. The reason why there's the establishment of Am Yisrael, there is not only a leader, someone who guides Am Yisrael, but dafka, a melech, a king, which a true king is supposed to do that as well. Yetzim v'Yevim is supposed to interest himself in the material and the spiritual well-being of all of Am Yisrael, and everyone as an individual, and Am Yisrael as a whole. That's part of his mandate. Avdus ani neis lachem. It's not honor Hashem is giving the king. It's namely his avdus, his servitude, that he's completely really loses himself as an individual, because his whole life is completely devoted. That's the way Am Yisrael Kim Melech is supposed to lead, especially when it comes to Am Yisrael. It's not kaved. It's not about just an honor or position, which perhaps it is as well, but namely it's avdus ani neis lachem, is complete submission to the nation. This is complete devotion to the nation. This is all predicated on the pasuk of Seim Tosim Alecha Melech. It's part of the 613 mitzvahs that the Yid, how does a king become a king? It's not that he comes out of the closet and say, hey, I'm the king because I come from this dynasty and so on. It usually doesn't work that way. It usually doesn't work, period. Because it is actually a very, for that matter, king-subject relationship, or the establishment of a king is very different than any other type of relationship between people. A king, the whole notion of a king is when on the onset you have a complete submission of a nation to an individual, which extracts the feeling or that sentiment or that interest to lead or to reign over a nation. That's how it works. That's why we find when there's a whole ceremony, or there's the spirit of the coronation of a king, the Yichi, like it says, Yichi Adeni HaMelech La'elam, like it says in Tanakh, that when there was the establishment of a king, there was a varied always, you always see it again, Lahavdil, not only by Yidden, but namely by Yidden, we find this, that there is that when there's a crowning of the king, that whole ceremony, you always see that formal submission of the nation to a melech. They say, shall he live forever? The idea is that he is, and we are following him. And that is, it says in a number of places, again, even psychologically, it's like not, in the unique, very unique type of relationship which exists by a king and his people and his nation and his subjects, that it comes and it's based, and it's only based for that matter, especially in the onset, is that complete submission of a people, and they say, we want you. It's not he comes and says, I want you, but they say, we want you, we submit ourselves to you. That extracts, that elicits that midah of malchus from the king, from within the king, which is usually very deep, concealed, hidden, and is not there to be expressed on a normal basis. Is when the people bring it out by the king. That's the same Tasim Alech HaMelech. Again, just the practical implementation, the practical implication of the mitzvah, same Tasim Alech HaMelech. Now, as we recall, just to point this out very quickly, when the Jewish people asked for a king, remember Hashem was upset at them. And as all the commentaries ask, how could you be upset of Am Yisrael? They're just doing another mitzvah. It's one of the 613 mitzvahs, same Tasim Alech HaMelech. So it says that they didn't do the mitzvah because they didn't want a king, because it says in the Torah. They wanted Kichol HaGoyim Beis Yisrael, that we should be like all nations, and so on. Again, like all the commentaries explain. But again, we're not going to go into that, into the details of what transpired in the time of Shaul, prior to the time of Shaul, that the Hashem was upset at Am Yisrael. But in the end of the day, there is a mitzvah, same Tasim Alech HaMelech. Now, we do understand, as we just explained, the same Tasim Alech HaMelech is a very sensitive mitzvah. Say sensitive because it's not just like, okay, I'm going to buy a little esrog and shake the little esrog. It's as we just said, to find within the king the interest to reign over a people, to completely his life completely transformed. It's completely transmuted to a life of privacy, to a public, completely a public life, a life on the public stage, but namely devoted to the public. And a true king, the more his devotion to the public, the more he loses his entire private life. In other words, his private life is completely submerged in the bigger picture, or to the grand cause of the people. And therefore there is the need, and it's part of this whole mitzvah of Shem Tasim Alech HaMelech, formally demonstrating of the nation, every individual as individual, but together in unison, the entire nation. We want you to lead us. That's what initially, and again, as we mentioned, even though the onset initially it stands out much more, but it's throughout the entire leadership of a king, there is this, that you accepted me upon you, and therefore you are going to implement my decrees, my edicts, and so on and so forth. But again, this is therefore we found in all of history, when in Tanakh or in other places as well, in Lahavdil, that's how it is. This is the nature of a king. A king which leads doesn't usually come out of nowhere. Now, there is something which is called Melech Ben Melech. He belongs to the royal dynasty, royal family, so it is all one continuation of leadership, kingdom, and so on. But generally, when it comes, so it's again, he's an extension of the previous generation. Even then, he has to have some sparks, or some image of a melech, especially a melech Yisrael, b'chochma, b'yira, namely a God-fearing Jew, a God-fearing person, someone who has the wisdom in order to lead and so on. But when it comes to, again, that he's an extension of the previous generation of his fathers and forefathers, and so too. But in the very beginning, there is, when we accept upon a king, it's a whole establishment of submission to an individual, again, which elicits his interest to leave his private life and lead and reign over this nation. That's the mitzvah of Seim Tasim Alech HaMelech, because the Melech, as much as he is Kaviyachal, so to say, the boss, he's the king, but it has to come from Seim Tasim, as we just said. There has to be a formal proclamation of subordinance to this individual. That's the mitzvah of Seim Tasim Alech HaMelech. And again, not only because of the mitzvah, or the reason that the mitzvah is in that manner, is because that's the nature of the leadership of a king. That's the nature, and in order to extract the interest of a king to lead in the form and fashion of a king, there has to be the same tasim, the submission of the people to the king, again, as a people and everyone as an individual. And similarly, the Alter Rebbe stretches this to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He is the Melech. He's inherently the Melech. If I like it, if I accept it upon him myself, or not, he is the king. He is Hashem. He's not only a king, but he's Melech Malchi HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what's the point of saying Tasim Alech HaMelech? And the answer is, again, a king is a king for them. A king is a king sometimes by nature, by birth. He has that, like the Gemara says, Keser Hilmasei. The crown fits him, and again, it suits him. But it's not only physically, which is also the simple meaning of the Gemara, Keser Hilmasei. But it's a certain personality that he is the kind of material to be a king. His personality is all about being a king, but that's not enough. It has to be same tasim in order to extract from him that the notion of kingdom which exists within him. There has to be the same tasim, the bittul of the people, and the same thing. When it comes to the same thing, when it comes to the Yid Lahav, the Yid and the Kodesh Baruch Hu, it's not enough the fact that he's a Melech Malchim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There has to be same Tosim Alech HaMelech. You have to officially accept the kingdom of Kodesh Baruch Hu. So what's the point of me accepting the kingdom of Kodesh Baruch Hu? What, he becomes less king if I accept him or not? He's the Melech, and he's a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And similarly, when the Eibishter says by Rosh Hashanah, for example, Kabel Malchusi v'achar Kabel Gzereisei. Accept upon yourself the Malchus, my Malchus. Why does he have to accept upon himself the Malchus? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is inherently a king. He's a Melech, Malchim, Lachem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, king of all kings. And the same thing, it says, Shikavlo El Malchus Shemayim Tchila. Every day we say Shema. The Mishnah says, why Shema before V'hayim Shemay? Which is, again, hear and heed to my mitzvahs. Isn't that the most important? Why does the Mishnah say Shema come before V'hayim Shemay in order to accept upon himself one's El Malchus Shemayim, the Kiyok of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Malchus again? He's a Melech, independent of how I accept him. But the answer is no, it's not so. Because in order HaKadosh Baruch Hu also, he has to find his interest to deal with creation, or to deal with any part of creation, and even to deal with Am Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because he's a Melech Malchim Lachem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he is so lofty and so high, and so he is God ultimately, and therefore for him, creator, infinite, and which is again everything which we find in our system, and what this realm is all about is diametrically opposite of what Hashem is all about. And especially Elam Hazeh Gashmi, this very physical world, including everything which is in it, even the sophisticated man. It's all about Hagbola, it's all about a finite world, a finite mind, people of mortality. Everything, the notion of finitude is what's present in this. In every Elam, for that matter, namely Elam Hazeh Gashmi, this very physical world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is diametrically opposite. Everything about HaKadosh Baruch Hu is he's infinite, he's limitless, and he is God, he's transcendent. So we also want to elicit within HaKadosh Baruch Hu his interest to want to deal with this world. He wanted to relate to Am B'nai Yisrael, even to the Jewish people. We've seen in our history that certain times that Hashem removed himself, and not Chas v'Shalom, that removed his koyach. Anybody else was in charge. But that's the word, like it says by Haman. You think Chas v'Shalom, Haman has any independent chayis, anything independent of other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which means his whole life is given to him every second from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If Haman had the ability to breathe, it was because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was giving him that koyach, that energy to breathe. Certainly to talk, to walk, to strategize even. But in the same token, it says HaKadosh Baruch Hu Salik La'ela La'ela. He kind of removed himself within himself in a reserved manner, not being interested in dealing with the situation. Even Yisrael Am Kereva, even when it reflected in Am Yisrael, which is the Am, which is Kereva, the close nation to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by the definition who they are, HaKadosh Baruch Hu stood in a very reserved manner. Then consequently Haman, you took that energy which is receiving every moment of Mechadish B'Tuvi B'chol Yim Tavim Masav Ereishis, every single day, every single moment, because Baruch Hu revitalizes creation, and therefore Haman was receiving his energy from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but not with the pnim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the interest of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because in the end of the day, Chas v'Shalom, this becomes an interest of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that there should be a Russia to plan, to strategize, a total annihilation of his own people. No, but he let it go. Because his interest, he stood in a state of reservation, as opposed to an outgoing interest. God forbid, that's what happened. And what happened? Malayla nodedosh nas hamelech, as it says in a number of places. When it comes to Achashverosh, it was the beginning of the miracles, beginning of the stages of miracles, which transpired then. That Achashverosh could not sleep that night. He asked to read the Chronicles, and then Mordechai came up, and again the rest was history from that point and on. So it says a number of places about Malayla hu nodedosh nas hamelech, that are referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's sleep and slumber was interrupted. Hinuleyon of Shem Yisrael says that at a certain time that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could go into a state of sleep and slumber. But what does it mean, sleep and slumber? Just when a person goes to sleep, everything around him it's irrelevant. He's right there in the room, but all his kaiches, which are usually functioning talents and faculties are completely removed from their position, and they become one with the neshama. In other words, they're not in a state of expression, manifestation, they're in expression of reservation. And everything, he doesn't even know the idea. Together with being in the room, he doesn't even know idea what's going on around him. Kaviyachol, obviously, so to say, metaphorically speaking, when you're dealing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, always have Kaviyachol, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's not only he doesn't know, he formally turns himself inwards as opposed to outwards. Nachman al-Itzlan, that became an Esad Yaakov, and we know it all over history, and unfortunately some parts of our history, that there wasn't clearly the Nodedosh Nas HaMelech, at least and to all of Am Yisrael, even though those who were saved, take the last generation, will tell you clearly Hashem was holding their hand and guiding them step by step till freedom, till the time that they were able to come to freedom. Because again, as you read and you hear from anybody who survived the previous atrocities transpired in the previous generation. B'chlolos, there was a great unfortunate success of a Tzeir HaYehudim, of a Haman in those times, yes, to implement a very big important part of his strategy and so on. What happened then? It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu Sadik La'ela La'ela. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends within himself, within very, very deep, and again, similarly, you could even understand it by two people. It's not that closeness is not measured if two people are in the same room. Closeness is measured if one has an interest to the other. That is true closeness, and sometimes physical proximity actual proximity is totally irrelevant. The person could be across the globe, and when there's an interest in the other person, that's when there is closeness. As opposed to you could be in the same room. If there's no interest of one party to another, so there's no connection. It doesn't matter if someone is in the same domain. Similarly, Hashem is everywhere. Hashem is everywhere. The question is, does he have an interest in dealing, or he wants to stand reserved, and God forbid the consequence, the physical and spiritual consequence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides to stand reserved. And what would cause it? Obviously, if Hashem doesn't appreciate the service of his people, to Rachmana litzlan at times, again, individually or collectively, all of Am Yisrael, Hashem stands in a state of in a reserved manner. And that's why it's so important, the Kabul Malchusay. That's why it's so important, the same Tasim Alech HaMelech. That's why it's so important, as we say, Tchili Kabul of El Malchus Shamayim. The first thing we have to show HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we are interested in him. We want not only his intervention, we want his Malchus. We want him completely to take over every single part of every detail associated with society, every part of the reality within this territory or this king, this life of these people and so on. That's the point of submission to an individual. We don't want the king, or the reason why we submit ourselves to a king, because we want him to come and find interest in us and deal with us, take care of us, look after us, again, not only in general, but in a very minute detail exists within society. And so too, when we stand Rosh Hashanah, for example, is a Kabul Malchusay. It's not only doing what Hashem wants. We have to find within Hashem's interest to be connected to us, to be part of Am Yisrael, and not only generally be part of Am Yisrael, but to be involved in every detail of Am Yisrael, individually and collectively. We want the HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be part of every single part of my life. So we have to. So how do we elicit from HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Which everything, again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not only a reserved person, or reserved rather, chas v'shalom, but a reserved entity. Everything, again, the nature, the makeup, the texture of Eilam, of this physical world, is diametrically opposite than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is a finite world, and this is a world of which is, again, it's just so the antithesis of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. Which he's Ein Sof, he's infinite, and he's transcendent, and so why would he want to connect? Just the fact that he created this Eilam, that's not enough for Hashem to want to connect and be passionately involved in Eilam. We need to. It's not only from two people, two mortals. The end of the day, the king is also a Basar Adam, a king of flesh and blood. We still, there's a part where the king stands reserved, and then we have to elicit from within the king that interest to lead, to guide, to change course from a reserved private person to a public person with a complete interest in every detail and iota and nuance which exists within his society, within the entire, within the people, the country, and so on. With HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it is a greater achievement. With HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we need to place even a greater effort, because it's not only a person with a reserved personality. HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Eilam are so antithetical one to another. This is an Eilam which is an Eilam Mugbal, a finite world, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Ein Sof. Why would they wish to want to connect? And the only reason, the only way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would connect is we do the same Tasim Alech HaMelech, additional to the simple mitzvah of bringing in a king or establishing a king within the society of Am Yisrael. There is the same Tasim Alech when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We must submit ourselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu before we fulfill Hashem's particular mitzvahs. The particular mitzvahs Hashem asks us to do, V'hoyim shomei tishmuel mitzvaysai, to put on the tefillin and to sheitul v'nesrig. Before we do that, we want to find Hashem's interest in us and in the mitzvahs which are incumbent upon us to do. Now, what is true? Every mitzvah is inherently godly, but in the bigger picture, we're going to do the mitzvahs. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is salik la'ela, and they can't say what good does it do, because the mitzvahs itself is part of it, part of eliciting HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We submit our HaKadosh Baruch Hu via the mitzvahs, but there has to be the formal acceptance, the formal calling upon HaKadosh Baruch Hu, finding HaKadosh Baruch Hu's interest to lead, to be a melech over us, and then consequently, or as a follow-up to that, we will do what Hashem, the particular mitzvahs that Hashem asks us to do. The Hayim Shemeh Tishmal Mitzvah. So there has to be the formal. You find it again overall in the beginning of the year. It's not only Kabel Gzeira, accept my edicts, but Kabel Malchusi. Like again, it says in Tanakh, Yidden gathered and they submitted themselves to an individual. Again, when they formally performed this mitzvah, Yechi Adeini Hamelech, with a complete, with a crowning, a procession of crowning, and formally submitting themselves, vocally submitting themselves to an individual. That was the same Tosim Melech HaMelech, again, to extract within him that interest to reign. So too when it comes to Kodesh Baruch Hu, and this is again why we gather together. Namely, it's l'kabel malchusi, to crown HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How do we crown HaKadosh Baruch Hu? In the same way, or primarily, when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a complete bittul. We are yours, and please Hashem, reign over us, you shall be ours. And consequently, we will do this which you ask us to do. But the first thing is that submission. And then the same thing every day, Shema before V'hayim Shemaya. And so other times, important times, in the stages and periods of Am Yisrael, again, individuals in times of his particular times of his life, namely Rosh Hashanah, but other times as well, but as well on a daily basis. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, then V'hayim Shemaya Tishma Mitzvah say. That's the same Tasim Alecha. And therefore, getting back to what we're saying over here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu established that before we do the mitzvahs again, which on the externally are particular mitzvahs, the mezuzah or this tefillin, which he says on the hand of the head, Hashem says, wrap yourself in the talus. Because wrap yourself in the talus is all about me. Is for you, Hashem. All about me is my submission to you. Everything about me. I wrap myself completely in your malchus. As we mentioned before, talus is a mitzvah that completely surrounds the person. And because that's the way the person submits himself to a king, Stama king. And he says completely, a king, we don't tell a king that, you're hired 9 to 5 to do this and this for us. No, that's not the way you can ever elicit the interest of a king to reign, to lead. Is again, this is the very nature. This is the very nature. It starts from Torah, and this is the way it was in the history of Am Yisrael. But it exists in the nature of Malchus. Again, it's a unique relationship, king and his people and the subject. It has to be a complete submission of the people to the king, and then the king says, "Okay." In other words, that it brings out, that it evokes and elicits by the king that interest to change mode, and then again they follow through with the particular requests and edicts of the king. So too, and again, when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the same Tosim Melech HaMelech, it's not only about a particular detail, but it's completely, we said before, we mentioned before, the soldier, everything about the soldier stands in submission, his eating, his sleeping, and so on and so forth. This is the taking the talus and surrounding myself that with those moments. And again, this is the purpose of the talus, and this is what a person has to ponder on this idea, b'shas, in the time that he puts on the talus, same Tasim Melech HaMelech. I'm placing myself, I'm completely submitting myself to Melech Malchem Lachem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the King of all kings, Hashem. And we go on, he says, Va'az, Vazai. And then, Afim b'chol zeis like tipul olavim uvafachad bizgalus libei. Even though, and it happens periodically with the same person, and sometimes one person in comparison to another person. And many times it happens with many people that we do all this, which formally, and at least externally, we follow along with this submission to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but not necessarily does it arouse within us a true fear, a true awe within our heart. And what happens if it doesn't? And Alter Rebbe is being very realistic over here, because the truth of the matter is, if we do things right, and generally we don't interrupt our connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, namely through staying pure in thought, speech, and action, which that itself allows that conduit of relation or of godly energy to flow between myself and God and myself. And when I do these mitzvahs the way I'm supposed to do them, my inner heart would kick in easily. But unfortunately, there are times that we do everything what we're supposed to do. At least, again, this even have formally ponder on the connection within HaKadosh Baruch Hu via this particular mitzvah, and the connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way it's supposed to be expressed via another mitzvah, like he says over here, he uses talis and tefillin, but he focuses on the talis of the Kabbalah HaMalchus, accepting the Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But what if I do it and I have the kavanah, but inside, in my heart, nothing is ignited. There is no ema, there's no facha, there's no true fear and awe, which we can obviously identify with, that we do sometimes things right and it's supposed to elicit the aim of a yira, and it doesn't. What happened if it doesn't? But he said, Alter Rebbe says, no worries. Maybe you should worry. Why? Go look behind why it's not happening. But as you're doing this Kabbalah HaMalchus, you should understand, or you're wrapping yourself in the talis, which is supposed to symbolize this Kabbalah HaMalchus, accepting upon yourself the Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or even generally the Machshava V'ini Hashem Mitzavalav, the idea which we mentioned, that pondering on the fact that Hashem is standing over me as an individual, that examines heart and the entire inside of the person, and serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu in an appropriate way, and as it comes through these mitzvahs, before davening, as he says over here. So I'm doing everything, and I'm even thinking about this. I'm pondering on this, and again, that as well, that kavanah being put on the talis and so on, everything what he said over here. What if it does not? My heart doesn't fill with true fear and awe. And I say true fear and awe because we could always, I'm not dealing with somebody who believes Yirah Shamayim is a badge, or Yirah Shamayim is a big shackle, or Yirah Shamayim is your head all the way fakvetch. That does not mean Yirah Shamayim has nothing to do with Yirah Shamayim. It's pashtus, a regular seder v'yid. We don't have to be fakvetch. As the Rambam says, even a yid, as you could see on the yid that he's a yid, walks at the street, the way a yid walks, the way a yid conducts himself. It doesn't have to be in a completely, it has to be in a very Yiddish way. But fakvetchkeit in your hands and your head and completely down and you shuckle for such a long time, it has nothing to do with Yirah Shamayim. Yirah Shamayim is yira, is a true feeling of fear and awe, like one chas v'shalom has to face a court case or any other serious time in his life. There is his heart, it stands with fear and awe. So too in dealing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's aim of a fachad b'izgalus libay. But Alter Rebbe says over here, what if it doesn't? Mikol makam, nonetheless. Because you're formally accepting upon yourself. The Alter Rebbe is saying, even again, I'd be realistic that even though by this individual or by this particular experience, there is no aim of a fachad b'izgalus libay, which means a revealed type of awe and fear, or of awe and fear b'izgalus libay, in a manifest manner in his heart. It doesn't exist in this case. Or rather, he's not experiencing in this case. The person is not experiencing in this case. Nonetheless, and mi'achar, nonetheless, mikol makom, as he says, it's not that everything is ruined, everything falls apart. Not at all. Because formally you're accepting upon yourself Malchus Shamayim, mi'achar shemekabel al Malchus Shamayim, because you're formally accepting upon yourself the yoke of heaven. You draw upon yourself the fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in your mindset, in the literally the desire within your mayach, within your brain, meaning to say that that determination that one has, that I'm formally accepting upon myself the Malchus Shamayim, even though it doesn't ignite that emotion of awe and fear within my heart, but in my mind, the establishment, the structured establishment within my mind is there, that I formally accept upon myself Malchus Shamayim, and the Kabbalah Zu Hi Amitis B'Lishum Safik, and this acceptance is inherently true, without a doubt. How do I know it's inherently true? Maybe it's an illusion. Maybe I'm formally establishing something that really doesn't exist. So I'm establishing this Kabbalah's HaMelech, Kabbalah's HaMalchus, accepting upon myself the Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But because maybe my heart is not ignited with that true awe and fear, manifest awe and fear, maybe it's totally illusional rather in my mind as well. Because there's some disconnect, the fact that my heart is not ignited, so maybe there's a total disconnect. So who says my Kabbalah is a true Kabbalah? And my acceptance of the Malchus Shamayim, my submission to the Malchus Shamayim, which is the way I accept Malchus Shamayim, who says it's true? Who says there's any validity to it? So the Alter Rebbe says it's not so, because it's inherently true. Why is it inherently true? Because this is the nature of a Yid. A Yid is a chelik l'kamimal, which is the yesod, for that matter, of the entire, all the information which we're learning. And that's what Alter Rebbe begins the second chapter in Tanya. Nefesh Hasheni is b'Yisrael chelik l'kamimal. That's the Yid, the neshama of a Yid. And this is what we have the uniqueness of the neshama of the Yid, that it's a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When something is a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by nature, it can't go against the interests of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of Hashem. Like, think about, would Hashem do something? Can Hashem do something which is opposite than what He wants to do? No, this is Him. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Yid, because he is a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as the famous expression of the Alter Rebbe, Yid nicht ken, nicht will, nicht ken sein, nifred me HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A Yid, not he wants, and not he can be separated from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Again, obviously you could try to obscure, eclipse that very nature. Rachmana litzlan is the notion of Aveda, it's a ruach shtus. Like the Gemara says, it's a spirit of folly, because it doesn't make sense. Nefesh kisechta tova, like it says in Zayir. It's one big question. How is it shaykh a Yid to do an Aveda? Because a Yid is a chelik l'kamimal mamash. It's a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Again, and then Nefesh Bahamis, which is a separate, a different soul, which tries to persuade a person to do neged Ratzon Hashem Rachmana litzlan. But it's one big question. How does the Yid ever separate himself from HaKadosh Baruch Hu by doing Chas v'Shalom Aveda? Has a dominance of the Nefesh Bahamis. But again, this is the challenge. HaKadosh Baruch Hu established the Yid for the benefit of the Yid, that it's not his program to do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. Hashem gave him two souls, the Nefesh Elikis, Nefesh Bahamis, Yetzel Tov and Yetzel Hara. And he wants us to make the right decision. Gave us the Bechira Chavshis, the freedom of choice, again for our benefit, that we're in not robotically or not just automatically, mechanically, and we're programmed to be part of the system, but we make our choice, which is again becomes more special, auspicious, and so on and so forth in our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the whole notion of sin, Rachmana litzlan, is something which is be'etzem abgefrekt in Yiddish, would be completely negated. The notion of sin is negated because a Yid by nature is one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, inherently one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a chelik l'kamimal. He is part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is again chelik l'kamimal is a pasuk in Tanakh by Yid. And Alter Rebbe even has the word mamash. He's mamash achil b'Kodesh Baruch Hu. So when you find that the Yid's heart is not ignited, meaning to say there's no manifest aim of a fachad, it's not. There is a problem. Try to look after why is it so, where did I go wrong, and so on. Why is there not that perfect symmetry between me and my Creator? And when I ponder on this, perhaps my heart should ignite with that awe and fear, a true feeling of awe and fear. But what if it doesn't? It doesn't take away from your implementing or your fulfilling the same Tassim Melech HaMelech, the accepting upon HaKadosh Baruch Hu, upon yourself as a king. Because the fact that you accepted this in your mind, in other words, you establish your mindset is in that direction. You establish this in your mind that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a king. We are his subjects, and as such I will submit myself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And because it is not an illusion, because it's true, the Alter Rebbe says, B'lishum Satik, without a doubt, because Shari Tevin Pashas Kol Yisrael. This is the very nature of every single Yid, because he has a chezek kamimal. There's a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and this becomes his very nature. Shalei limred b'melech HaKadosh Yisbarach, not to rebel in the holy King, blessed be He. And therefore, the Torah that he learns, or the mitzvahs that he does because of this acceptance, and this formal acceptance, even a formal acceptance, and again, because of this formal acceptance, the mitzvah he learns of the mitzvah that he does as a result of this formal acceptance, because of, and as a result, the Torah that he learns of the mitzvah that he does as a result of drawing this Yirah Shamayim, this fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu within his mayach and his mind. It's called not only Stamin Aveda, but it's called a complete Aveda. Like every service of a servant to his master and to his king, even though his heart is not ignited. Because Kabbalah's El Malchus Shamayim, that notion of not rebelling in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is the very nature, the texture of a Yid. Because he's a chilek kamimal, a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is his nature, shalei limred, not to rebel in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because it's the very nature, so when I formally accept it upon myself, there's no deficiency. Perhaps again, it could permeate, it could penetrate rather my heart, that I should feel that way, but if I didn't, it is no formal deficiency in this Kabbalah Samachos expressing my accepting HaKadosh Baruch Hu as my Melech, because again it's part and parcel of the Yid to do what Hashem wants, not to rebel in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now the Rebbe says it's called not only Aveda Shlema, a complete Aveda. Like any service of a servant to his master and to the king and to his king. Opposed to when a person learns Torah, fulfills a mitzvah just as a result of his love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in order to cleave to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through his Torah and his mitzvahs. And he knows that Hashem placed himself in Torah. And I love you, Hashem, so much. I want to be connected to you. And therefore I learn your Torah. I do know the mitzvahs are your limbs. Therefore I want to embrace you. Because I love you. Therefore I'll do your mitzvahs. Because it's not predicated on Yiro. So it's not called B'Shem Avedus Ha'eved. It's not called servitude of a servant. And who says there has to be the notion of service? Maybe it should just be a loving relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And my learning Torah and doing mitzvahs should be just a follow-up, an expression of my love. Who says there has to be the Aveda? Who says it's so important of the whole notion of servitude, submission, subordinates, and so on? Answer is that Torah Amra. The Torah says, "Vavadetem es Hashem Elokeichem." And the reason why Hashem used this term, "Vavadetem es Hashem Elokeichem," because Hashem wants our Aveda. Not only is this loving relationship with Him. And again, and there's a number of psukim in the Torah. Alter Rebbe brings Avadet es Hashem Elokeichem. Another place it says in Chumash Dvarim, "Eisi tavedu." There has to be the avdus, and not only I'm doing what I'm doing because I love. like it says in Zayir, Pashas Bahar, Hai Turo, the highly and if you don't have that, this is not found by you, by the person, Loi Sharya Bikdusha. There's no holiness which identifies with him. There's no holiness which dwells within the person. Which means to say that if a Yid can go by all his life, or part of his life, part of his day even, he does what Hashem wants him to do. There's no holiness which dwells within him. Very strong statement indeed. It has to be the Aveda, the Kabbalah Malchus Shamayim, the Yira Shamayim, the Eil Malchus Shamayim, and then he follows suit. All the other different types of relationships follow suit. The B'Kadmisa, there has to be the Eil Malchus Shamayim in order there should be the Shari B'Kedusha. As he concludes over here, Shekol Adam Tzarich Liz B'Shtei B'Chinas Madregas, there has to be by everyone these two levels, Sai B'Heim B'Chinas Eved U'B'Chinas Ben. There has to be the Eved to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that expression of Avdus, and as well, again, which we spoke about over here as well, the level of Ben and Son, again, more, there's more of that love relationship, like a son and a father. There's obviously also the Yiras, it says, and that a person has to fear. So the Tiro, but namely when it comes to a son and a father, there's more on the surface, there's more that loving relationship, or relationship based on love. But nonetheless, by every year there has to be both. The Kadmisa in the onset, our relation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to begin with Eved, with El Malchus Shamayim. And he concludes over here, even though there is the Ben, which there is as well, that Avdus within that Ben of relationship as well. Again, just like we find Pashtus, simply, when it comes to a father. Additional to Kabidus Avicha V'Simecha, there is that type of fear, reverence to a father. So it exists also. If it exists by father, it certainly exists with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As the Ben has that Eved, has that Yira as well. But that's a special in order to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu primarily as a Ben, and there should be that Yira as a son, and there should be that Yira. I'm saying this in brief over here, but there should be that Yira, that also that fear which runs, the thread of fear running through that Ben Av son father relationship. That's a special Aveda. There has to be that comes through Yira Ilah, the supreme Yira. Perhaps maybe this coming class will maybe take a little bit time to expand on this difference of Yira Ilah, Yira Tata. But the norm is there has to be Vavadatem Es Hashem Lekechem, as he says when it comes to a Torah. The first thing is the sheir, again, the ox on the field. The first thing is Yavin Ala'el B'Kadmisa. That's to begin with the yoke, which is placed upon the ox. And again, this is what the Zayir, based on the pasuk, that Hashem is demanding from the Yid. Not only I want you to relate to me in the way of Ben or Av, Ish v'Isha, and so on, more of a loving type of relationship. Primarily, there has to be the idea of Avodas Hashem, which comes with what? Malchus Shamayim, as he says, Itzrich Barnash leKabbalah El Malchus Shamayim. It has to be B'Kadmisa, through which there is Kedusha, Sharia upon the person, it dwells upon the person, the Kedusha, the sanctity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And with this, the person becomes a wholesome person in his relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Have a wonderful evening.